welcome back, guys. In today's episode, I'm sharing 10 true and disturbing stories about road trips through Appalachia. These are encounters that will make you think twice before taking the back roads alone at night. But before we begin, please consider subscribing, and don't forget to like and share it with your friends. Let me know where you're watching from. Thank you all. Now let's start. I was 32 when I decided to take a backroads trip through Appalachia. At the time, I told myself I was looking for quiet. Peace, maybe. I'd just left a job I hated, ended a relationship that had gone stale long before we admitted it, and felt this itchy need to disappear for a while without actually vanishing. So I packed a duffel, scribbled out a rough route, and called Finn, my closest friend since college. The kind of guy who says yes before you even finish the question. I had no idea what I'd actually find out there or what I'd lose. We left just after sunrise from Hawley, this little town in southern Virginia that doesn't even show up on some maps. Finn's truck was this old Ford that rattled when it idled and groaned on hills, but he swore it had heart. We laid out a paper map on the hood. Yeah, the real kind. Creased from glove box storage, and traced our fingers over winding roads and dotted hollers. No GPS. No interstate. That was the deal. We wanted the long way, the crooked way. The way you only take when you've got time and something to get away from. We were headed to Boone, North Carolina. But we took the most roundabout path imaginable, stopping in towns where no one locked their doors, eating pie from places that felt like someone's grandmother just baked it out of habit. We crashed in motels that buzzed with fluorescent lights and had remote controls with half the buttons missing. It was perfect, familiar, in a weird Americana kind of way. By the third day, we were winding through Everhart County. The trees were so thick and tall they felt like a ceiling over the road. The sun barely made it through, even though it was mid-morning. The curves were tight, blind, sometimes barely wide enough for the truck. It was the kind of road that makes you drive slower, like it's warning you not to rush. Finn hummed this low, scratchy tune I didn't recognize. Some half melody that felt like it was being remembered instead of sung. No lyrics, just sound. That's when we passed mile marker 88. I remember it because Finn pointed at it and said, "See? Once you hit mile 88, everything's downhill." He had that grin he always got when he was trying to be both funny and vaguely philosophical. I rolled my eyes and laughed, but I took a mental note. Something about the number stuck with me. Hours later, after more turns than I could count and a stop for gas at a place that only took cash, we saw it again. The same mile marker, same rusted pole, same chipped paint on the sign where the 8s looked like they'd melted into infinity symbols. I stared at it too long, like I was trying to make it make sense. "Wait," I said, leaning forward. "Didn't we already pass that one?" Finn slowed a little, glanced in the rear view. "Maybe it's a loop," he said, casual, but his fingers tightened on the wheel. Or maybe they just reused the sign, but neither of us believed that. We kept going. The road kept climbing. The trees started to press in closer. The light shifted, even though the clock said it should be midday. It felt like dusk, and the air changed too. It got heavy, like it was holding its breath. Smelled like wet leaves, old wood, and something faintly metallic. Not blood. Not quite. Not quite. Just off. We were both quiet when we saw the gas station. It sat just off the road, tucked behind a row of thin pines. No name. No brand. The canopy above the pump sagged like it was tired, and the paint on the walls peeled in long strips, like sunburned skin. One maroon sedan was parked out front. No plates, no stickers. Windows up. Engine off. Finn pulled in slow. "I'm just gonna ask for directions." "Maybe top off the tank," he said, already unbuckling. I stayed in the truck. Something about the place made my skin crawl, like it had been waiting for us. The air was too still. No birds, no bugs, just the sound of gravel crunching under Finn's boots as he walked toward the door. I heard the ding of the bell as he stepped inside. Then nothing. I waited. 5 minutes, 10. I checked my phone. No service. Of course, I tried calling him anyway. Straight to voicemail. 20 minutes passed, then 30. I told myself he was just talking, or the clerk was slow, or maybe he got caught up inside browsing snacks. But the truck felt colder, like the temperature had dipped while I wasn't looking. I got out and walked to the station. The front door was cracked open, letting in a narrow strip of dusty light. Inside it looked empty. The shelves were there, but bare. Dust so thick it coated everything in a dull film. 2 plastic chairs sat near the window, yellowed and cracked. A vending machine buzzed softly in the back corner, one coil slowly turning like it forgot how to stop. But Finn wasn't there. Neither was the sedan. Or our truck. I stood there, frozen. My mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. Then I shouted his name. Again and again. My voice bounced around the space like it didn't belong there. I ran to the glass, pounded on it with my fist. Nothing. Then the vending machine made a sharp clank. The lights flickered, and I saw him. Through the glass on the far side of the station, Finn stood perfectly still, just watching me. He didn't move, didn't smile. His face looked stretched, like it was being pulled from the inside. His eyes were wide, but distant, like he was watching me from somewhere else entirely. I rushed the door, yanked on the handle. It didn't budge. I slammed my shoulder into it. Nothing. I shouted his name until my throat burned. The lights buzzed louder, then they cut out. For a second, I was alone in the dark. When they came back on, everything had changed. The store was clean, bright, stocked. Music played faintly from a speaker near the ceiling. A man stood behind the counter, older tan work shirt, white stubble, hands that looked like they'd fixed 100 engines. He smiled like nothing was wrong. "Need help?" he asked, polite. Too polite. I stared at him. My friend, he was just here. Tall guy. Red flannel. You had to have seen him. His expression didn't even twitch. "You came in alone?" He said it like it was a fact, not a question. Just the way things were. I asked again. Described Finn down to the way his boots squeaked on tile floors. The man just shook his head and quietly handed me a receipt. It read, mile 88. That was it. I left the station in a daze. Outside, the world had changed again. The road behind me was gravel, not pavement. The sky looked wrong, too flat, too dull. The trees leaned in like they were curious. The gas station behind me was falling apart. Windows broken, vines crawling up the walls like they'd been growing for years. Then I saw the truck. It was parked at the edge of the lot, doors locked. Finn's phone sat on the dashboard, screen spider-webbed with cracks. I smashed the window with a rock, reached in and turned the key. The engine started like nothing had happened. Same old rattle, same smell, oil, sweat, road dust. His stuff was still there. Pack, half-drunk water bottle, the journal he always kept zipped in the side pocket. The GPS on the dash blinked awake. Recalculating, mile 88, no signal. I ripped it out and threw it. Watched it shatter against a tree. Then I drove. For what felt like days, I drove. Through winding hollers that never ended. Towns with no names. Places that looked familiar and wrong at the same time, like someone rebuilt them from memory but got the details slightly off. I stopped once at a diner where the menu only had 3 items, and the man behind the counter vanished when I blinked. No one would talk to me. The roads looped back on themselves. The mile markers reset. 93, 94, 95, then back to 88. Again and again. I started sleeping in the truck. Couldn't trust the motels anymore. But when I couldn't stay awake, I'd give in and pull off to the side. Always the same setup, one bed, one flickering lamp, curtains that didn't fully close, and always the same dream. Finn, inside the station, behind the glass, staring. The vending machine buzzed in the background like a lullaby that never ended. I called my sister once. Somehow, the phone worked. I tried to explain, but my voice cracked, and all I could hear was this faint laughter on the line like someone else picked up. Or maybe it was me. I hung up before I could find out. The worst part? I don't know what's real anymore. Finn might still be out there, trapped, watching, waiting. Maybe he's stuck behind that receipt, or maybe he never existed at all. Maybe I made him up. Maybe I'm still in the station, behind the glass. Now I drive without looking at the signs. I avoid gas stations entirely. My brother Wyatt and I had been in a slump for weeks. We'd both been stuck for a while, me in a job that barely kept me awake, him bouncing between night shifts and dead-end gigs. One Friday night, sitting on his apartment balcony with cheap beer sweating in our hands, we finally said it out loud. We needed to get out. Not just a night out, not another weekend of Netflix and fast food. Something bigger. No schedules. No GPS, just the road. We settled on Appalachia. Wyatt had always wanted to drive through the mountains. Twisting old back roads, forgotten mining towns. It sounded like exactly the kind of escape we were looking for. A place where nobody could call us. No work emails. No traffic. Just dense woods, weird little diners, and time to reset. We packed light. Threw some clothes into duffel bags, loaded a cooler with drinks and sandwiches, and grabbed an old road atlas from the back of Wyatt's closet. He'd marked it up with red circles, places that sounded interesting, or just had names that made us laugh. Hog Hollow, Creech Bend, Bearskin Gap. It was half planned, half chaotic, the right balance. The first day was everything we'd hoped for. Green hills rolled past our windows. Trees crowded the road so tightly it felt like we were tunneling through them. Every now and then we passed a farmhouse with rusted swing sets or old tractors in the yard. Kids waving from porches. Dogs chasing the car until we turned a corner. It was peaceful. The kind of peace you only feel when you're far from anything familiar. By the second day, things started to change. The towns got smaller, more spread out. Sometimes we'd drive 20 or 30 miles without seeing a single building. The trees got thicker, the roads narrowed. We were threading through a green tunnel, barely wide enough for 2 cars. Even though the air was warm, a weird stillness settled over everything. We told ourselves we'd stop before sunset. That was the plan. But plans slip, especially on road trips. One moment it was late afternoon, and the next, the sun was dropping behind the ridge, and we were still driving. No cell service, no motels, just endless curves and hills and shadows that got longer every minute. The headlights were the only thing keeping us connected to the road. Everything else had gone dark. That's when we saw the sign. It was simple. A wooden board nailed to a leaning post, like someone had thrown it together in a hurry. The letters were uneven, hand-painted in white, Gallows Curve. Below the name, a single arrow pointed straight ahead. Wyatt snorted. Great name, real warm and inviting. I laughed, but something about it didn't sit right. The board looked freshly painted, but the wood underneath was cracked and weathered, like it had been out there for decades. We were already past it before I could say anything, so we kept going. About 10 minutes later, another sign appeared. Same board, same lettering, same arrow. We both went quiet. Huh, Wyatt said. Guess the curve's coming up, but it didn't. The road kept twisting like it had been, but there wasn't any one turn that stood out. Just more trees, more shadows. Nothing that said Gallows Curve. Then we saw another one. Same board, same angle, same peeling corner. This time, Wyatt slowed down. Is it just me, or was that the exact same sign? Yeah, I said. Maybe someone just put up a bunch of them? Seems excessive. A 4th sign, then a 5th. They were getting closer together. I started counting without realizing it. 6, 7, 8. Each one lit up in our headlights, then vanished behind us like it had never been there. That's when we saw the headlights in the mirror. At first, it was a relief. Another car meant we weren't alone, but then the relief faded. It was a truck. Big, boxy, looked like something from the 80s, maybe older. Its high beams were on full blast, flooding our car with blinding white light. It didn't back off, didn't try to pass. It just clung to our bumper like it was tied to us. Let him go around, Wyatt muttered, easing toward the edge of the road. The truck didn't move. He slowed down. The truck slowed down. He sped up. The truck stayed with us. No horn, no flashing lights, just silence. And that glare, it wasn't following us. It was hurting us. The signs kept coming. Gallows Curve. Again and again, same board, same arrow, same cracked edge. It was like the road was looping, or lying. Wyatt gripped the wheel tighter. I tried to see who was driving the truck, but the glare was too strong. Beyond that wall of light, there was nothing. Then we saw a gravel pull-off. Barely wide enough for the car, but it was something. Wyatt didn't hesitate. He yanked the wheel and pulled off the road. We skidded to a stop in a spray of gravel. We waited. Expected the truck to pass, to keep going. But nothing came. The road behind us was empty. Completely still. No engine. No tires. Just silence. I leaned forward, staring through the rear window. Nothing. No lights. No movement. It was gone. We sat there for a long time. Neither of us spoke. My heart was racing. Wyatt's breathing was shallow. Then I noticed something else. The signs were gone. The road ahead, where we'd seen a dozen gallows curve signs, was bare. No posts, no arrows. Just empty blacktop winding into the dark. We turned around. We were done. Only the road didn't look the same. The trees were different. Closer, gnarled. The turns felt sharper, more sudden. And more than once, I swear we passed the same crooked tree with the split trunk. Same broken branch hanging like a hook. Identical. Not similar. Not similar. Identical. We kept driving. No signs. No buildings. Just road. Then, finally, we saw lights up ahead. A gas station. Fluorescent glow. Cracked pavement. Old vending machines. We pulled in like it was the last safe place on earth. Inside, the clerk looked up. We must have looked insane. Pale. Sweaty. Wide-eyed. Wyatt stepped up to the counter. "Hey, you ever hear of Gallows Curve?" The guy froze. Just froze. For a second, it felt like everything got quieter. Then he shook his head, voice barely above a whisper. "Ain't no place by that name round here." He said it like we shouldn't have asked. We didn't press him. Didn't ask for directions. Didn't even buy anything. We just got back in the car and got on the highway. Me and a couple of friends, Quinn, Drew, and Marley, had been planning this road trip since early July. One last breath of summer before school started up again. Nothing big or fancy, just a weekend cruising the back roads around southern Westmont, through the tree-covered hills and tiny towns with one diner and maybe half a gas station. We borrowed Drew's beat-up Saturn, packed it with more snacks than sense, and loaded an old road atlas in the glove compartment, because Quinn didn't trust GPS once we got off the main highways. Honestly, it was supposed to be fun, simple. The kind of trip where you get lost on purpose, roll the windows down, and argue about music while the road bends around hills like it's been there forever. And for a little while, it was exactly that. We hit the road early, sometime around 9. The sun was already high, the car was hot, and every time we stopped, someone picked up another bag of something salty or sweet. We had no real destination, just a route we traced with a marker through the old atlas. Curvy state roads, little dots that mark small towns we'd never heard of, and the occasional scenic overlook we thought sounded cool. The first weird thing was subtle. We were somewhere past a place called Hinder Creek, maybe an hour out, when we passed an old barn. Nothing remarkable. Slouched to one side like it had just given up, with a rust-colored roof and a collapsed fence running along the field beside it. 5 minutes later, we passed it again. I recognized it instantly. Same bent weather vane. Same broken window on the second floor. Marley laughed and said maybe all barns in Westmont looked like that. I wanted to agree. I almost did. But then we saw it a third time, and a fourth. By then, none of us were saying much. Drew kept checking the atlas. Marley stopped making jokes. Quinn fiddled with the AC dial even though it wasn't hot anymore. I tried to keep things light. Said maybe the map was out of date or we took a wrong turn and looped without realizing. But even as I said it, I felt this tightness crawl up the back of my neck. It was maybe 4 in the afternoon when we passed the rusted-out truck, another landmark that became familiar way too fast. It was sitting in a field of weeds so tall they brushed its side mirrors, the kind of truck that looked like it had been parked there when the world still ran on cassette tapes. And we passed it again, and again. The first few loops were maybe 15 or 20 minutes apart, but they started happening closer together. We'd turn onto a new road, or so we thought, only to find ourselves staring at the same dead cornfield with the crooked silo, the same green sign that read Canton Ridge 6 miles, even though we never got closer to it. Then it started getting dark. Not just the usual slow fade into evening. It was like the light drained faster the deeper we went. Trees started closing in. The sky turned this strange gray-purple that made everything feel off. Like it wasn't just late, it was wrong. We finally pulled over when we hit a gravel turnout on the side of the road. It looked off, too symmetrical, like someone had laid the gravel down in a perfect grid. I remember stepping out of the car and just standing there, listening. No birds, no insects, just this heavy quiet. I crouched and picked up a handful of gravel. It looked normal. White stones, sharp edges, but the second I closed my fist, it crumbled, just fell apart into dust, like I'd grabbed a pile of crushed chalk. It didn't even leave dirt on my palm, just vanished. Quinn asked if I was okay. I said yeah, even though my chest was starting to feel tight. I wiped my hands on my jeans and didn't say anything else. We got back in the car and drove. Not because we had a plan, just because stopping felt worse. That's when we saw the mile markers. They were small at first, painted white wood stuck into the grass along the right side of the road. 36, 35, 34. At first I thought they were normal, until I realized we hadn't seen a single mile marker all day. Not one. Now here they were, perfectly placed, evenly spaced, counting down instead of up. None of us said it out loud, but it felt like they were leading to something, or warning us. We drove in silence for a long time. At some point, Marley switched off the music. Nobody complained. Every few miles, another marker ticked down, and every time it did, I gripped the door handle a little tighter. When the light showed up in the distance, I almost cried. A gas station. Old, small, like something out of a black and white movie. There was a single pump island with two ancient nozzles and round dials that probably hadn't worked since before I was born. The sign out front buzzed dimly, its letters too faded to read. We piled out of the car like we'd just crossed a desert. Inside, the place was cold. The lights were on, humming softly. The cooler cases were running, but everything inside had white labels. No logos, no words, just sealed plastic bottles lined up in neat rows. Drew opened one. It hissed like it had pressure, but when he tipped it, nothing came out, just a dry clink of glass. We didn't touch anything else. There was no one at the register, no door to a back office. Just that low hum, the white labels, and the faint buzz of the flickering sign outside. We left in silence. No one needed to say anything. Back on the road, the mile markers kept counting down. 20, 19, 18. The surroundings didn't change. We saw the same crooked oak tree, the same fallen power line, the same dip in the road that rattled the Saturn's front end. No matter which direction we turned, we ended up back on the same stretch. We passed the number 13 3 times. At some point, the air started feeling thick, like it was hard to breathe, or maybe we were just breathing too fast. I couldn't tell. We stopped talking, stopped looking at each other. And then it got quiet. Not quiet like before. Not just no birds, quiet. This was nothing. No wind, no insects, no tires on pavement. Even the engine felt muted, like it was happening behind a wall. That's when the headlights appeared. One car. No engine sound. No change in distance. It stayed exactly the same space behind us, no matter how fast or slow we went. When we pulled to the side, its lights blinked out. Quinn turned around in his seat and just stared at the dark behind us. Drew muttered something about letting it pass, but no one moved. It didn't pass. It didn't do anything. And then, just like that, a sign appeared. Bright white paint, fresh, new. I and Tier State 47, 2 miles. We didn't ask questions, didn't double check, we just drove. I don't remember those last few miles, not clearly. Just the feeling of the road straightening, the lines getting sharper, the pavement smoothing under the tires. Then the sound came back. Crickets. A breeze through the trees. Distant frogs. The moment felt like waking up from a nightmare that hadn't ended yet. We got off the road at the first real exit we saw and found a cheap motel off Route 19. I remember the cheap soap and the scratchy towels more than I remember falling asleep. The next morning, we looked up the route we'd taken. There was no Hinder Creek, no gas station, no gravel turnout. No part of that road showed mile markers that counted backward. But the map did show one field near the edge of a wildlife preserve. I recognized it from where I'd picked up the gravel. We drove back there. I got out of the car, walked to the edge of the field, and scooped up a handful of gravel. Same thing. It crumbled in my palm like dry powder. That was all I needed. I dropped it, turned around, and drove us home without another word. We never talked about that weekend again. I was 24 when I took off on a road trip through the Appalachians. I needed to get away from everything: my job, my roommate, the constant noise of the city. I didn't have some grand epiphany or dramatic reason. I just felt stuck. Like if I didn't move, even a little, I'd rust in place. So I grabbed a cooler, tossed in some gas station snacks and half-melted cheese, printed a stack of old-school paper maps, and got into my tired, rust-speckled sedan that rattled every time I hit 50. The plan was simple: go east until I reached the coast. No set route, no strict schedule, just keep driving, sleep when I was tired, eat when I remembered, and let the road decide the rest. I figured I'd find some answers out there, or at least a little quiet. For the first 2 days, it was exactly what I needed. The roads curved through rolling hills and sleepy towns with names like Waverly and New Crestfield. I saw herds of cows that looked like they hadn't moved in hours, diners with pie that somehow tasted like 1993, and a sunset over a valley that nearly made me cry for no reason I could explain. It felt right. Then the third night came. I was somewhere in the hills near a town called Kelmore, except I hadn't actually seen Kelmore, just the name on a faded road sign. I'd left the interstate that afternoon and had been winding my way along a narrow 2-lane road ever since. The kind where if another car comes, one of you has to dip into the gravel to let the other pass. But there weren't any other cars, just trees. Endless trees pressing in on both sides, like they were leaning closer with every mile. That's when I noticed the gas light was on. I hadn't seen a gas station in over an hour, not even a shack with a broken pump or a bait shop with a jerry can out front. Just darkness settling in, and the long, slow drop of the needle toward empty. When the glow of a sign finally broke through the trees, I almost laughed from relief. It was just a flickering blue light hanging over a squat building that looked like it hadn't been updated since the 80s. I pulled in fast. Only one pump was uncovered. The others were draped in torn trash bags, hoses twisted on the concrete like limp snakes. The whole place gave off the vibe of a forgotten outpost. Something still standing out of stubbornness, not purpose. I got out, filled the tank without looking around too much. The woods were too close, the shadows too still. Every crack of a twig behind me felt like something watching. I kept glancing over my shoulder, even though I didn't see anything. Inside the store was worse. The place was dim and dry. Shelves leaned at odd angles. Most of them were empty. Just a few cans with faded labels and a dusty box of off-brand cereal that looked like it had survived 3 presidential administrations. A humming cooler sat in the corner, but most of the drinks were gone. I grabbed a bottle of water. Didn't really want it, just needed to be holding something. The man behind the counter didn't say a word, just stared. He looked older but not fragile. His hair was thick, slicked back like he was frozen in time. He didn't blink as I walked through the store, didn't look away. It wasn't hostile exactly, it was just fixed. Like his job wasn't to ring up customers, but to memorize faces. When I finally brought the bottle over, I asked if there was a motel nearby. Something close, even just a bed for the night. He didn't answer right away, just kept staring. Then finally he said, "Keep driving, don't stop until you pass the next county line. That's all." No explanation, no warning, no shift in tone. Like he was reading a rule, not giving advice. I waited for him to smirk, or for a chuckle. Like maybe this was a weird local joke. But his face never changed. It was carved in stone, just staring back at me like I'd already done something wrong. I left a few bills on the counter and walked out without waiting for change. Back on the road, I tried to shake it off, told myself it was just some weird local thing. Maybe a guy messing with tourists, or someone not thrilled about outsiders rolling through. Whatever, I had a full tank. I'd find a motel in the next town. Except 10 minutes in, I started to notice something strange. I passed a barn. It was falling apart. Big gash in the roof, the kind of structure that looked like it was about to collapse inward. Then I passed a billboard tilted hard to one side, still clinging to an ad for fried chicken that must have been 30 years old. Paint peeled, letters missing. A mile or two later, I saw a mailbox leaning over a ditch. No house near it. The number half worn off. A few minutes later, I passed the same barn, same billboard, same mailbox. I slowed down, trying to think. Maybe I'd taken a wrong turn, looped around somehow, but there hadn't been any turns. No forks, no signs. The third time I passed the barn, my fingers started gripping the wheel tighter. I checked the GPS on my phone. It had flickered back to life with a weak signal. According to it, I was still moving forward, not turning, not doubling back, just a straight line. And yet, the same landmarks kept repeating, over and over. On the fourth loop, I saw something new. A figure, standing near the ditch beside the barn. My headlights barely caught it. Just a tall shape, maybe 6 feet, maybe more. Hard to tell. No face, just outline. And as I passed, its head turned sharply in my direction. My arms stiffened. I kept driving. Told myself it was a trick of the light. Or maybe someone walking along the road. It wasn't illegal to stand by a barn, just weird. Next loop, it was closer, right on the shoulder. The beams of my headlights hit it fully this time. It was lanky, clothes shredded and filthy. Didn't move, just stood there, arms slack, head tilted, like it was trying to hear something through the noise of the engine. I didn't stop. My throat was dry. I focused on the road. Then came the sixth time around. I don't know how long I'd been looping at that point. My phone said 40 minutes, but it felt longer. My thoughts weren't lining up right. I was sweating, even though the night was cold. And then I saw it. Red brake lights ahead of me. At first I thought it was another car. Finally someone else on the road. But as I got closer, I felt something twist in my gut. It was my car. Same faded bumper sticker peeling off the window. Same dent from a parking lot hit and run 2 years ago. Same exact scratches on the left side door. I slammed on my brakes. The other car didn't move. For a few seconds we sat there facing the same direction. My hands were trembling. I blinked, and it was gone. Just gone, like it hadn't been there at all. I pulled off onto the gravel shoulder and turned off the engine. Sat there in silence, trying to breathe. Trying to convince myself this was sleep deprivation, some kind of stress hallucination. Then I heard it. Tap, 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 tap. 3 sharp, deliberate taps against the back window. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My entire body froze, every muscle screaming at me not to look. I clenched the keys, jammed them into the ignition, and floored it. The tires screeched. Gravel sprayed. I didn't care. I kept my eyes locked forward and didn't check the mirrors. The loop went on for what felt like forever. Same barn, same billboard, same mailbox, but no figure now. No other car. Then, like someone flipped a switch, a green sign rose out of the dark. "Welcome to Franklin County," I almost cried. I didn't let my foot off the gas until I saw lights up ahead, neon buzzing over a cracked parking lot, a motel barely holding itself together. I stumbled into the lobby, legs like rubber. The clerk barely looked up, but when I handed over my ID, his eyes flicked to my face. He studied me for a second, then asked, "You came through the ridges?" I nodded. He slid the key across the counter and muttered, "You got out lucky." I locked the door behind me and didn't sleep. Just sat on the edge of the bed with the TV on full volume, like maybe the sound would keep whatever it was away. Morning eventually crept in through the curtains. I told myself it was over. But when I stepped outside, I saw the car, got in, and left. My son and I were doing this kind of off-the-grid road trip, just the two of us. I'd taken some time off work, and he was on break from school, so it felt like a good opportunity to just get out for a while. Nothing elaborate, just some father-son time, driving through the Appalachian region. I'd picked the back roads on purpose, thinking it would be quieter, more scenic. A little detour from the noise. I didn't tell anyone else, but I was hoping the slower pace might spark a real conversation between us. Something deeper than the usual day-to-day stuff. He was 15, getting harder to reach. The roads twisted through the hills in that way that makes you forget which direction you're heading. Trees leaned in tight from either side, so sometimes it felt like we were driving through a tunnel made of branches. A lot of those stretches didn't have guardrails, just a narrow line of cracked asphalt and then a steep drop or a rocky slope. The GPS showed tiny towns scattered here and there, but most of them looked like they'd dried up a long time ago. A gas station here, a boarded-up store there, nothing with much life in it. At first, the repetition just felt like déjà vu, nothing you'd stop the car for. I noticed a little white church, sitting crooked on a curve, windows covered with warped plywood. Across the road was this old rusted swing set in the front yard of what used to be a house. The roof had caved in. Vines were growing up through what was left of the porch, just another forgotten place. But about 10 minutes later, we rounded another curve, and there it was again. Same church, same swing set, same eerie creak of the wind pushing the swing just a little. I blinked, glanced at the odometer. We were definitely still moving forward. We hadn't turned around, hadn't taken any exits. There hadn't even been a place to turn. And yet, the exact same spot was in front of us again. I didn't say anything, just kept driving. Then it happened a third time. That's when my son leaned forward and said, "Didn't we already pass this place?" I lied. "Nope." Looked similar though, but my voice came out too flat. He looked at me sideways, like he knew I was trying to convince myself. It kept happening. Same church, same swing set. It became like a marker we couldn't get past, no matter how far we drove. We finally stopped at a gas station that popped up out of nowhere. Just a single old pump, sitting in a gravel patch off the side of the road. The sign was rusted and half fallen. The building behind it looked like it hadn't seen customers in years. I pulled in anyway, mostly just to break the loop. The pump worked. The numbers rolled like normal, but the store, it was dark. Not just closed, dark. Like someone had taken all the light out of it. I walked up to the window, knocked without thinking. That's when I saw movement inside. A man stepped out of the shadows behind the counter. He was pale, like he hadn't been in the sun for years. He walked right up to the glass. Close. Too close. His lips moved, like he was speaking. But no sound came out. Nothing at all. And his eyes, unblinking, locked on mine, felt wrong. Not angry. Not empty. Just watching. My son grabbed my sleeve and whispered, "Can we go now?" I didn't answer. I just nodded, screwed the gas cap back on without finishing the tank, and pulled out. When I looked back, the man hadn't moved, still at the window, still watching. About 5 minutes down the road, my phone froze. GPS locked up. Wouldn't update. The little arrow stayed on that same curve we'd seen over and over. I tried rebooting it, nothing. Then I tried calling my daughter, just to hear a familiar voice, something grounding. It rang once. Then, this sound came through. A kind of hollow rush, like wind echoing through a vent, but layered with something that didn't belong. Not static. More like a whisper you could almost recognize, but never quite understand. I hung up fast. Later, she told me her phone never rang. We kept driving. Hours, maybe. The sky started turning orange behind the hills. My son was quieter than usual. He kept shifting in his seat, looking out the window, like he expected something to appear just beyond the trees. I tried to keep my mind steady. Kept thinking, if we just stayed on the road long enough, we'd hit a real town, find a real intersection. That didn't happen. Instead, we reached a split in the road. A Y branch, the kind you almost miss until you're on top of it. 2 wooden signs leaned to either side. The paint was mostly gone. One arrow pointed left, the name on it faded into streaks. The other pointed right, just as unreadable. My son leaned forward, squinting. "Left," he said. "There are lights." I looked. It was pitch black in both directions, but I turned left. A mile in, the lights showed up. Not headlights, not headlights, not street lamps. Lanterns. Dozens of them. Hanging from branches along the roadside. Soft yellow light, flickering like candle flames inside old glass. They swayed like something had disturbed the air. But nothing else moved. The trees were still. The wind was gone. And under each lantern stood a person. At first I thought it was some kind of roadside event. Maybe a historical reenactment. Or a festival. But no one moved. They stood in total silence, shoulder to shoulder, lining both sides of the road, men, women, children, all facing the road, all barefoot. My son gripped the seatbelt so hard I could hear the fabric tighten. "They're barefoot," he whispered. All of them. Their clothes didn't match. Some wore ragged layers like they'd come out of a storm. Others wore outfits that looked like they belonged to another century entirely. Bonnets, overalls, torn flannel, no expressions, just eyes. Dozens of eyes, following the car as we passed. I kept my hands steady on the wheel and stared ahead. I didn't look into their faces, and I didn't stomp. When I finally checked the mirror, the lanterns were gone. Not dimmed, gone. Instant blackout. Instant blackout. The road behind us was completely dark. We didn't say anything for a long time after that. The next thing was the car. It jolted hard, like something yanked it back, even though the road was smooth. The gas gauge dropped straight to empty. I had just put gas in. It made no sense. I coasted to the shoulder and turned off the engine. Silence. No crickets. No frogs. No breeze. Just a kind of dead stillness you only notice when it's wrong. My son reached for the door. I put my hand on his arm. "Stay inside," I said. He froze. Then a light appeared around the curve ahead. Not from another car. This was too high, too wide. It spread through the trees like a spotlight, but softer. It didn't move. It just hovered, glowing through the branches like a low moon caught in the wrong place. There was no sound. Not an engine, not tires, just that light. I turned the key. Nothing. Just a dry cough from the starter. My son started whispering to himself. I could hear his voice shaking, though I couldn't make out the words. Second try. Still nothing. The light flickered once, then again, then vanished. Gone. Third try, engine started like normal. No warning lights. Gas gauge jumped back to half full. I didn't say a word. I put it in drive, and we kept going. We didn't stop again. Not until the road widened, and those familiar green highway signs started showing up. Real ones, with names we knew. Real exits, real traffic. We merged onto the interstate somewhere near Boone, surrounded by headlights and taillights and fast food signs glowing in the distance. And it felt like waking up. We didn't talk much the rest of the drive. Later that week, I looked up the route we'd taken, tried to find that gas station, that church, even the fork in the road. Nothing showed up. Not on the GPS history, not on paper maps, not on any forums or travel blogs. It was like we'd taken a road that didn't exist anymore, or maybe never did. I don't have a theory. I've stopped trying to figure it out. All I know is this: I'm never taking the back roads through Appalachia again. We tossed a cooler into the back seat with a bunch of snacks, filled up the tank with the last of our cash, and barely glanced at the folded paper map I'd swiped from my dad's glove box. Jonah had just wrapped up his first year at a college up north. Tara had been working double shifts all summer at this greasy little diner in Ashfield. And me, I just needed out. Home had gotten too heavy, too loud, too much. We wanted that kind of freedom where the world shrinks to nothing but road and music, where the only plan is to go until you feel different. And for the first few days, it worked. We drifted through sleepy little towns with names we couldn't pronounce, past barns leaning like old men about to give up, cut through ridges that sliced the horizon into pieces. Every stretch of road felt like it belonged to us. We blasted our terrible playlists and sang like idiots, argued over who was picking the next gas station snack, pointed out clouds that looked like weird animals. It felt light, easy. At night, we'd either pull into some sketchy motel where the beds were hard and the walls were thin, or find a quiet turnout and pitch Jonah's dented old tent. I remember lying there, staring up at the trees, thinking maybe this was what peace felt like. This strange, quiet space between places, with no one asking who you were supposed to be. But then we hit West Virginia. That's when things started to feel different. The roads got narrower. Towns faded into nothing more than names on signs. Our phones went from 3 bars to 0 like they were giving up. At first, we joked about it. Jonah said we'd officially crossed into the twilight zone. Tara said it felt like we were on the moon. But the more miles we put behind us, the quieter we all got. By late evening, we hadn't passed another car in over an hour. The radio was dead static. Even the CD player had started skipping for no reason, so we shut it off. Tara curled up in the back, hoodie pulled over her head, scrolling through old photos she'd saved on her phone. Jonah had knocked out in the passenger seat, head bobbing against the window, mouth open like he was in a coma. I stayed locked in, hands on the wheel, watching the curves roll out ahead like thread unraveling. That's when I saw it. A green mile marker, mile 42. I didn't think much of it, just another sign. But 10 minutes later, another one, mile 42. Same crooked dent in the corner, same faded scratch through the number. I blinked hard and kept driving, and then it came again, mile 42. This time, I slowed a little. That's when Tara sat up, pulled her hoodie down, and leaned between the front seats. Her voice was quiet but sharp. Didn't we just pass that? I didn't answer. I didn't know how to. A few more bends in the road, and there it was. Again. Jonah woke up the second I hit the brakes too fast on a curve. He sat up, blinking hard, confused. What's going on? We rolled past the same sign, fourth time. And I knew. We all did. Something wasn't right. No one said it out loud, but the air in the car shifted. The laughter we'd been forcing dried up completely. We were looping, circling something. I didn't know how. I didn't know why. Jonah told me to pull off at the next turnout. I spotted one a minute later. A little gravel patch off the shoulder, barely big enough for the car. I pulled in, killed the engine, and instantly regretted it. Silence slammed into us. Not normal silence. This was wrong. Thick, flat, no insects, no rustling leaves, no hum of distant cars. Tara stepped out with me, arms crossed over her chest, like she was trying to keep something out. I turned around to look back the way we'd come. My heart dropped. The road behind us was gone. Just gone. Not hidden, not covered in fog. It just ended. Right at the edge of the turnout, the pavement dropped into pure black. Like someone had sliced it clean off. There was nothing there. Just empty space, not even trees. Just a void. Tara pointed, her hand shaking. That guardrail, wasn't it on the left side before? She was right. It had flipped. Everything had. The road behind us wasn't just gone, it had changed. Reversed. Like a mirror version of where we'd just been. I didn't want to stay still. I don't think any of us did. I told them we were leaving. No one argued. We jumped back in the car, and I hit the gas. That's when the trees started to close in. It wasn't obvious at first, just the forest leaning in a little closer, branches poking into the beam of the headlights. But then I started seeing the same tree, a white birch, tall, with bark split down the middle like a peeled apple, leaning hard to the left, same snapped branch hanging like a broken limb. We passed it again, and again, and again. Every time it came into view, I gripped the wheel tighter. My jaw started to ache from clenching. I could feel it in my chest, that creeping pressure, like the road wasn't taking us forward anymore, like we were stuck in a loop folding tighter and tighter in on itself. Then came the knock. It was so small, at first I thought it was gravel popping under the tires. Just a soft tap against the side of the car. Jonah turned around in his seat. Did you hear that? Another knock. This time, the back window. Then Tara's side. She jerked away from the door, scrambling to the middle of the back seat. Her voice broke. What the hell is that? The knock started to speed up. Small at first, then louder, harder. Each time I sped up, they followed. Faster. When I slowed down, they got heavier, like fists pounding, like someone trying to get in. Jonah was yelling at me to keep going. Tara was crying, begging me to stop. And then we saw it. At the top of the next hill, just where the headlights started to fade, something was standing in the road. Not a deer, not a person, something else. It was tall, way too tall. Its arms hung almost to its knees. Its head tilted to the side like it had no muscles holding it up. I slammed the brakes. The car jolted, tires squealed, and everything stopped. No one spoke. None of us moved. It didn't either. Just stood there, swaying. Then it took a step forward, and the knocking came back. But this time, it was everywhere. Every window, every part of the car, like dozens of hands pounding all at once. I slammed my foot down. The Civic fishtailed, straightened out, and roared forward. We flew past the thing, whatever it was. Jonah was yelling at me not to look. "Don't look in the mirror," he kept saying. "Don't look." But I looked. It was ahead of us. Again. Same figure, same road, waiting. Tara grabbed my arm, sobbing. "Turn around, please turn around." But there was nowhere to go. I looked back. The road behind us was gone again. Same black void. Same drop-off. The world just ended. Jonah screamed, "Kill the lights, do it now." His voice cracked, but I didn't think. I just did it. I flicked the headlights off, and everything went black. The knocking stopped. The figure vanished. The only sound left was the low hum of the engine. The car idling in total darkness. We didn't talk, barely breathed. I could feel Tara shaking in the back seat, her fingers digging into the upholstery. Jonah stared straight ahead like he was trying not to blink. We sat like that for what felt like hours. Eventually, I turned the lights back on. The trees looked different. The birch was gone. The road curved in new ways. And then the signs came. Mile 43, 44, 45. Finally, in the distance, we saw it. A soft orange glow. Street lights. A town. None of us said anything until we rolled into the parking lot of a rundown motel. I turned the engine off. We got out. No one even bothered with luggage. We just went inside. That night, we didn't speak. Each of us took a separate bed. I don't remember falling asleep. I don't remember dreaming. I just remember waking up to sunlight and silence. Over breakfast, Jonah made some dumb joke about getting lost. Tara stared out the window like she didn't remember any of it. But I remember. I remember the signs. The birch. The knocking. And now, every time I'm driving late at night, every time I see a green mile marker out of the corner of my eye, I wait. I wait for the number to repeat. I was 32 when I decided I needed to disappear for a while. So I packed a bag, printed out some old-fashioned maps, and drove. No real destination, no itinerary. Just me, my car, a couple playlists, and a vague plan to drift into the mountains until I stopped clenching my jaw every time my phone buzzed. I took the back roads on purpose. Around eastern Kentucky, I lost the last of the light. The sun dipped behind the ridgelines, and the world turned this deep shade of shadow that made the trees look endless. The route I followed was stitched together from an old hiking magazine and a stranger's forum post. Sketchy, I know, but that's kind of what I wanted. Something unreliable. Something real. Somewhere along the way, I passed a bent sign pointing toward Maple Hollow Cabins, one of those half-rusted things barely visible through undergrowth. I remembered someone online recommending it. Said it was quiet. Said it was the kind of place where you could hear your own heartbeat and not much else. That sounded perfect. I figured I'd get in late, crash hard, then hike one of the ridge trails the next morning. Maybe stay a few nights, maybe not. I didn't have a return date. The idea was to just keep drifting north along the Blue Ridge Parkway until I felt like myself again. But by the time I crossed into West Virginia, it didn't feel like drifting anymore. It felt like falling. The road kept winding higher and deeper, and the trees pressed in tight on both sides. No gas stations. No streetlights. Just the occasional abandoned shack or a mailbox leaning sideways like it gave up a long time ago. And the sky, man, I haven't seen a sky like that since I was a kid. Full patchwork of stars, thick and endless. No light pollution. No planes. Just black stitched with silver. It was beautiful and unsettling. Like I'd slipped out of the regular world and into some quieter version of it where things didn't quite work the same. That's when the static started. The radio cut out first, just faded from music into this low, scratchy hiss that didn't seem to change no matter what station I turned to. And when I glanced down, I noticed my GPS was frozen. Little blue arrow stuck mid-road. I refreshed it a few times. Nothing. Then the screen went dark. Weird, yeah, but not unexplainable. Mountains do that, signal dead zones. I shrugged it off. But there was this tiny itch at the back of my neck that said I'd gone just a little too far off the map. Still, I kept driving. It was a little after midnight when it happened. The car jerked once, like I'd hit a rock or dipped into a pothole I hadn't seen. except there wasn't anything on the road. Then total blackout, headlights gone, dashboard dead, engine stalled like it had been yanked off life support. One moment I was cruising under soft moonlight, the next I was swallowed whole by darkness. I barely had time to hit the brake. My hands froze on the wheel. The tires crunched onto gravel as I eased the car onto what I hoped was still the road shoulder. I turned the key. Nothing. Tried again. Still nothing. Just this dry, rasping cough from the engine, like it was choking on dust. I sat there for a long minute. My breathing was loud, too loud. The kind of loud that fills up a quiet space and makes it worse. I couldn't see the road in front of me. Couldn't even see past the hood. Just outlines of trees in every direction, like something was crouched just out of reach. I tapped my phone. No signal. No bars. Just the mocking brightness of an empty screen. And that's when I noticed how cold it had gotten. The kind of cold that creeps in, not because the temperature dropped, but because something else changed. It didn't feel like night air anymore. It felt sterile. Still. I kept telling myself it was fine. I was tired, cars break down. Maybe I missed a turn and ended up farther out than I meant to. But the air had a weight to it, like the forest was waiting. Then I heard it. It started faint, almost like wind, but it wasn't. It had a pattern, a high warbling cry. Animal maybe, but wrong. Like it was mimicking the idea of an animal without actually being one. The tone dipped and twisted, almost curious. Then it hit this sharp, keening pitch that made my skin crawl, like it was trying out different sounds, testing them. Underneath that, there was a second noise, low and steady. A deep inhale, long and slow, like something massive was drawing breath just over the next ridge. Not close, but not far enough for comfort either. I shrank down in my seat, trying to become part of the car, trying not to blink too loud. Every little reflection of moonlight off the chrome felt like a beacon. I turned off my phone screen, pulled my jacket tighter, tried not to move. Then I heard it. Tap, 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 tap. 3 short knocks on the trunk. I flinched so hard my teeth clacked together. Then came a scrape, slow, deliberate, like metal dragging on metal. It dragged from one side of the trunk across to the other, ending with this horrible, drawn-out squeal, like someone enjoying the sound. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. My body refused. I told myself it was a tree branch. Maybe something had fallen. Raccoons. Something small, harmless. Harmless. But then something moved in front of the car. It just stepped into view. The shape was all wrong. Tall. Way too tall. With long limbs that bent like they hadn't figured out how joints were supposed to work. Its fur, or what looked like fur, was patchy, uneven, like it had been stitched together from different things. And its snout stretched too long, with skin that pulled unnaturally tight across a face that didn't match the rest of it. And the mouth, God, the mouth. It wasn't open. But it wasn't closed either, just this crooked line that curved upward, like it was trying to approximate a smile. But it wasn't a smile. It was a suggestion, a warning. Its eyes glinted not like animal eyes, not red, not glowing, just this pale reflection, like glass catching light, but they didn't blink, just stared straight through the windshield into me. I couldn't move. My heart felt like it was trying to hammer its way out of my ribs. Then it lifted one arm. Slow, steady, bent elbow, long fingers. It reached toward the driver's window. That's when I broke. I jammed the key in the ignition again, twisted it so hard I thought it might snap. The engine gave a dry, grinding noise. Once. Twice. Third time, it roared to life. The headlights blasted on full beam. For half a second, everything lit up, and in that second, the thing vanished. Gone like it had never been there. I didn't wait. Threw the car into drive and floored it. Tires screamed on the gravel. The steering wheel jumped in my hands as I tore down that narrow road. No clue where I was going, just away. I must have taken every curve at twice the speed limit. Trees blurred past, close enough I could have rolled the window down and touched them. My knuckles were white on the wheel. I didn't stop until the sun came up. Not fully. Just that first golden crack of dawn cresting over the ridges. Light hit the windshield, and I realized I was shaking so hard I could barely keep my foot on the pedal. Eventually, I saw a sign for a diner. Harlow Hill Cafe. Small place at the top of a slope with 2 pickup trucks in the lot. The smell of coffee hit me before I even opened the door. Inside, it was normal. People eating pancakes. Someone reading the paper. The cook whistling behind the counter. But I wasn't normal anymore. I ate half a biscuit, drank 2 coffees back to back, and when I finally stepped outside to check the car, that's when I saw it. 3 long gashes across the trunk, shallow but clean, like something sharp had tested the metal. And right there on the driver's side window, outlined perfectly in dust and condensation, was a handprint. Not smeared, not accidental, just pressed there, 5 fingers. No palm lines, no blood, just a mark, like a message. I got in, backed out, and didn't stop until I hit a major highway. I never went back, never tried to find the cabin. We were all burned out after our first year of college, tired of dorm food, campus noise, and pretending we had any real clue what we were doing with our lives. So we decided to do something dumb and spontaneous, something that felt like freedom. We picked a direction south and agreed to head down through the Appalachians with no real destination, just a loose route and a vague plan to crash wherever we felt like it. We wanted winding roads, weird roadside attractions, maybe a campsite or 2. We packed the basics into Eli's old Camry, made a rough playlist, grabbed the paper map just in case. Then we hit the road, like idiots who thought cell service was guaranteed everywhere. The first few days were exactly what we wanted. Lazy and loud, full of bad gas station food. We took our time winding through the valleys, windows down, shouting lyrics over the roar of the wind. We found little diners where the waitresses called us sweetheart and refilled our mugs before we could ask. It was warm and easy, and exactly the kind of nothing we'd been craving. Then came night 4. We'd spent the afternoon cutting through western Virginia, somewhere between towns we couldn't pronounce, and hills that looked copy-pasted from every mountain highway postcard. The sun had dropped behind the trees by the time we got hungry, so we pulled off at a fast food place, ate way too many fries, and figured we'd find a cheap motel or campsite nearby. That's when the GPS offered us a shortcut. It was late and we were tired, and it cut nearly 40 minutes off our drive to the next stop. The route looked fine, just another back road connecting one forgotten highway to another, so we took it. The road started out normal enough, a little narrow but nothing sketchy. Just 2 lanes winding between trees that leaned in too close. No lights, no houses, just forest on both sides, thick and shadowed, the kind that looks like it's been untouched for decades. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. At first, we didn't care. We were still riding that post-dinner high, cracking jokes about how we were definitely going to die in some Blair Witch sequel. But the laughter got thinner as the road kept going. After about an hour, none of us were talking much. There were no intersections, no signs, no mailboxes or fences, just dark trees that looked the same no matter how far we drove. It felt like we were moving, but not really getting anywhere. That's when we saw the first mile marker. It said mile 23, which would have been comforting proof we were on an actual state road if it hadn't been the first one we'd seen. And things got stranger from there. Next marker, mile 24, then mile 25. We started paying closer attention. The numbers kept going up, like we were moving deeper into the forest, instead of toward anything that resembled a town. My hands were tight on the wheel. Aiden pulled out his phone, but there was no service, not even a flicker. Eli tried his same deal. I remember saying something like, maybe it loops back eventually. No one responded. Then the gas light came on. It was one of those dumb things that shouldn't have been a big deal, but I swear my chest tightened like someone pulled a string behind my ribs. We hadn't passed a single station since getting on that road, not even a rest stop. I eased the car onto the gravel shoulder to double-check the map, even though we already knew it wasn't going to help. That's when I noticed the car in the brush. It was barely visible at first. Off to the right, tilted awkwardly in the ditch, half covered in vines and leaves. The body was dented, windshield shattered, the kind of damage that doesn't happen in a clean accident. Looked like it had been there for years, but the dirt leading up to it was fresh. You could clearly see the tire tracks. Deep ones. None of us said anything. We just looked at it for a few seconds too long, then got back in the car, like our silence might keep whatever weird thing was happening from getting worse. I started driving again. Not fast, just steady, like we could outrun whatever was starting to settle into the air around us. After a while, a light appeared in the distance. Just one. Faint and yellow, flickering like a candle in a window. We got hopeful. Stupidly hopeful. It had to be a town, or a house, something normal. Turned out to be a gas station. It sat by itself on a patch of cracked asphalt. No other buildings nearby. The sign above was missing half its letters and buzzed like an old neon beer ad. The pumps looked ancient, no card readers, no digital displays. Just plastic buttons so faded you couldn't read them anymore. Still, we pulled in. Eli tried the pump. Nothing. I told him to check the store, thinking maybe we had to pay inside. He tugged on the door and it opened without resistance. The inside was worse than the outside. Everything looked too neat. Shelves fully stocked, but only with one or two things. Dozens of cans of the same exact soup, same label, same size, same expiration date, lined up like soldiers. An entire aisle of chips, all the same flavor. Long expired but sealed tight. The cooler hummed in the corner, but when we opened it, there was nothing inside, just dry air. No drinks, not even a smell. There was no one behind the counter, no sounds except our own footsteps on the tile. Then the bell over the door chimed. None of us had touched it. We froze, just for a second. Then we ran, bolted straight back to the car. I turned the key, floored it. Didn't wait for seatbelts or arguments. We peeled out of the lot so fast the tires kicked gravel into the air. Then we saw the car across the road. It hadn't been there before. No engine noise, no headlights when we pulled in. But now, it was sitting there, perfectly centered on a patch of overgrown grass. Lights on, engine running. Inside, I could see silhouettes, 3 of them, still facing forward, so facing forward. Then their heads turned slow, synchronized toward us as we passed. That was the moment everything really snapped. We drove without speaking. The road didn't match anything we remembered. It doubled back on itself in ways that didn't make sense. Curves we were sure we hadn't passed before. Every time we thought we recognized something, a bend in the road, a big tree, a rock formation, it would shift just enough to make us doubt ourselves. And the mile markers? They all said the same thing now, mile 23. Over and over and over. I don't know how long we drove. Time got weird. At one point, Aiden whispered that it felt like we'd been in the car for days. Eli stopped checking his phone completely. The battery was almost gone, and no signal ever came. They both started murmuring in the back seat, low voices. Mostly, "Don't stop," and "just keep going," like they were afraid I might pull over and something would, I don't know, catch up to us. At some point I blinked and saw lights up ahead, real ones, wide-spaced, bright white, the kind you only get from highways. I didn't question it, just drove straight toward them, like I'd never seen light before. When we hit the on-ramp, I almost couldn't breathe. We didn't talk, didn't look at each other, just followed the interstate for hours, until the sky started turning pale and the outlines of mountains gave way to flat ground again. Eventually, we found a real gas station, a busy one, with people and trucks, and a cashier that looked at us like we were just another set of tired kids. We got out, stretched our legs like they'd forgotten how to work, filled up the tank without saying a word. None of us mentioned what had happened. Not then, not on the rest of the trip. It felt like saying it out loud might open a door we couldn't close. After that night, we stayed on the interstates, always. Even when the GPS begged us to shave off a few miles. Even when detours added hours, we didn't care. And to this day, if I see a road sign that says something like Hollow Creek or Ridge Lane, I don't even glance toward the turnoff. I just keep driving. I don't care how much longer the drive is, because I'm not convinced we ever really left that road. And I know there are places tucked into those mountains that don't want to let you out once you're in. The summer before college, when I was 19, I stuffed my beat-up Honda Civic with two of my best friends in way too many bags, and we set off across the country. It wasn't some carefully mapped trip. No spreadsheets, no itinerary, just a general idea. See as much of the country as we could, spend almost nothing, and stretch that last slice of freedom before adulthood caught up with us. It felt like a goodbye tour, not in a sad way. More like one final chaotic adventure before we all got yanked into different cities, jobs, dorms, degrees, whatever came next. We didn't say it out loud, but I think we all felt it. We decided to cut through the Calhoun Mountains. On paper, it saved time. And winding roads through green hills sounded better than crawling down an interstate next to trucks for hours. We figured it'd be scenic, maybe even a little wild. But in the campfire stories and gas station jerky kind of way, not the "this might kill us" kind. That first day in the mountains was perfect. The roads twisted sharp, climbed steep, our ears popped, our stomachs lurched, but it felt like a ride. Trees closed in tight on both sides, tall enough to block out the outside world. Sunlight barely cracked through in places. Beautiful, but sealed off. We blasted music, rolled the windows down, shouted over the wind, made jokes about moonshiners and banjo duels. The towns we passed were small, 5 or 6 buildings tops. Always built around a post office or an old diner with a faded sign. One even had a payphone out front. People moved slow, but not in a creepy way, just like they had time. We slept in the car the first night, parked behind a church in a town called Miller's Hollow. No one bothered us. In the morning, we got coffee from a cash-only place, and eggs that tasted like actual chickens had been involved. By the second night, we got cocky. Thought we could push farther, make up ground. We were playing chicken with the sun and losing. The light dropped fast. 1 minute golden, the next it was dusk. The road narrowed, barely wide enough for 2 cars, though we hadn't seen another vehicle in a while. No streetlights, no gas stations, just trees pressing tighter and tighter, like they wanted to squeeze the road shut. That's when the GPS started acting weird. At first it lagged. The little blue dot put us a mile behind where we were. Then it jumped ahead. Then it froze. Full bars on the interface, but no service. All 3 of our phones were the same. Dead air. No map, just a floating dot stuck in nowhere. It got quiet in the car after that. None of us talked about how dark it was, or how long it had been since we saw a house. Then, out of nowhere, a turnoff. A fresh road, jet black and smooth. It didn't show up on the map, no name, no markers, just this perfect strip of asphalt branching to the right. And yeah, in hindsight, it sounds stupid, but in the moment, it felt like a gift. A chance to find a town, a gas station, people, so I turned. Not 10 minutes later, we saw the gas station. It looked abandoned, but the sign was lit, buzzing, half-dead neon. Half the letters were out, so it just read ASTAT. I slowed. Maybe it was old, not empty. But then I saw the pumps. No handles, just rusted stumps, like the nozzles had been ripped off years ago and never replaced. The cement was cracked and overgrown. But inside, the lights were on. I pulled up slow. The interior looked stripped. Not messy, stripped. Empty racks, a bare counter, no register, no fridge, nothing. Like it had been looted, then scrubbed. I almost honked. Really almost did. But something about the stillness, the light, the emptiness, it stopped me. My chest tightened. Not panic exactly, just wrong. I didn't say anything, just eased off the brake and drove away. Nobody argued. A few minutes later, the houses started. At first, just 1 or 2, then more, then too many, and they all looked the same. Same roof, same peeling paint, same porch with the same missing rail. Every single one had a single window glowing with the same weak yellow light. We tried to joke about copy-paste real estate. It didn't land. We kept driving, house after house. No driveways, no cars, no movement, just that glow. Then I looked at the trip meter. 3 miles. We'd been driving for almost an hour. I tapped it. Nothing changed. Are we looping? Jonah asked. His voice was careful, afraid of the answer. I didn't reply. My jaw was locked. We tried side roads, gravel paths, even a dirt trail that looked unused for years. All of them led back to the same stretch of road, same houses, same lights. Derek swore he saw a curtain twitch in one window, said it was quick, like someone peeked and ducked back. I believe him, but I didn't look. None of us wanted to confirm it. Gas was low, really low. I started thinking about what it would mean to run out there. No signal, no people, no exit. I slowed near one cluster of houses. I don't know why. Maybe to knock, maybe yell, maybe just get out. Then the front door of the last house opened. A man stood in the doorway. He didn't step outside, didn't wave, didn't speak, just stood there. Shadows behind him swallowed everything, so I couldn't see details, just a shape. The window glowed, but it didn't light anything. The porch was dark. His stillness wasn't casual, it was waiting. I hit the gas. We didn't say a word. Just watched the houses disappear as the road curved downhill and the trees closed in again. Branches scraped the car roof. And then, headlights, a car behind us. No sound, no engine, just beams of light. I sped up. It matched, I braked. It braked. Perfect distance, no plate, no markings, just glow. Jonah begged me to lose it, but the road was too tight. One wrong move and we'd tumble into a ravine, then a gravel turnoff. I swerved. Tires fishtailed, stones flying. We skidded onto the shoulder. The car behind us didn't follow. Its headlights shut off, gone. We waited, holding our breath. Nothing, just crickets and the tick of the engine. Then my phone buzzed. 1 bar, enough to reload the map. We were 20 miles west of where we'd turned. We hadn't looped, hadn't turned around, but we were miles away. We didn't waste time, drove until the trees thinned, until a highway sign appeared, until a real gas station came into view. And I've never taken a mountain detour after dark again. I had this old Honda Civic that rattled if you drove faster than 60. A backpack stuffed with wrinkled clothes, a half-dead flashlight, a bag of trail mix, and just enough cash to maybe make it another week if I didn't do anything stupid. I told myself I was going to figure things out on the road, that the drive itself was the point. No destination, no plan, just the idea of getting away from everything. I figured I'd drift through West Virginia, snake across Kentucky, then slide down into Tennessee. I didn't even print a map or look at routes beforehand. I just thought, I've got my phone, I've got a tank of gas, and the road's not going anywhere. That first day felt good, like a movie. I stopped at these crusty little diners where the waitresses called me Hun and poured watery coffee into chip mugs. I fueled up at gas stations that looked like they hadn't been updated since the early 90s. Single pumps, sun-bleached signs, vending machines that probably didn't work anymore. There were long stretches where I didn't see another car. Just the road curling through the hills and the trees pressing in on either side like they were trying to listen in. Every time I passed a semi, the driver gave a little wave or a nod. I'd nod back like we were part of some unspoken club. I wasn't used to that kind of quiet respect. It felt weirdly comforting. The mountains were bigger than I'd imagined. Not tall like the Rockies, but heavy, thick, like they'd been there forever and didn't really care who came or went. But the deeper I got into those back roads, the more that feeling shifted. It wasn't threatening at first, just isolating. I started noticing how the houses thinned out, how driveways disappeared. I went hours without seeing another soul. Somewhere around late morning on the second day, my phone lost signal. Just flat out 0 bars, nothing. I figured it'd come back soon, but it didn't. The road shrank too. Paved 2 lanes became cracked, 1-lane strips that barely weaved between trees. Sometimes the forest closed in so tight I couldn't even see the sky anymore. And that's when the truck showed up. I didn't really register it at first. It was just this rusted-out green pickup, dented in on the driver's side, sitting off the shoulder like someone had abandoned it. That happens a lot in the mountains. Old vehicles left to rot. I drove past it without thinking twice. But then I saw it again, maybe 45 minutes later. Same color, same rust, same dent. This time parked differently, kind of angled like someone had just pulled over. My stomach did this little twist, but I brushed it off. Maybe a similar truck. Old trucks like that are everywhere, right? The third time, I felt my fingers locking on the steering wheel. Same truck. I hadn't turned around, hadn't circled back, but there it was, waiting like it knew I'd be coming. By the fourth time, I couldn't tell myself it was coincidence anymore. I wasn't imagining it. I wasn't lost. I hadn't taken any turns. The same green pickup kept appearing. Always just ahead, always off to the side, always with that same dented door. I felt cold sweat starting to pool at the base of my spine. My hands were cramping from how tightly I gripped the wheel. I didn't see another vehicle for hours. Then, just when I was starting to feel like I'd driven into a place that didn't actually exist on any map, I saw a town. Sort of. It barely counted. 2 intersecting roads, 1 broken stoplight dangling uselessly above the intersection, a small white church, and a squat little building with flaking paint and a red neon sign that blinked, open, though only 2 or 3 letters still worked. I pulled over in front of it. The general store, whatever it was, looked like it had been forgotten by time. Inside, the shelves were dusty and sagging, stocked with a weird mix of canned soup, ancient cleaning supplies, and faded postcards that probably hadn't sold since the 80s. There was this constant low hum coming from an old fridge in the corner, and it felt louder than it should have. The guy behind the counter looked like he'd been carved out of wood. Thin, wiry, with a crooked jaw that didn't quite line up when he talked. He stared at me for a long time when I walked in like I was a museum exhibit. Didn't blink, didn't smile. I asked him how to get back to a main road, something that would take me toward Tennessee. He just said, "Stick to Route 37, don't stray." That was it. I asked which direction Route 37 was, thinking maybe he didn't hear me right. He turned his head slowly, like someone behind me had said something, then looked back down at the counter and rang up the soda I grabbed. Never made eye contact again. I didn't press it, took the soda, got back in the car, and drove out of town fast enough that the tires kicked gravel behind me. By the time the sun dipped below the treetops, the road was barely visible under the shadows. The trees felt like they were pressing in tighter with every mile. My headlights stretched maybe 20 feet ahead, just enough to see the road, but not enough to see what might be just beyond it. Then came the truck again. Same exact spot where I'd seen it hours before. But this time, the driver's side door was wide open, like someone had stepped out just before I showed up, or was waiting for me to get close. I hit the gas. Hard, tires squealing as I sped around the bend. I didn't care about curves or potholes. I just wanted distance. The night got blacker than I thought possible. No street lights, no other cars, not even distant lights from houses. Just trees, the sound of the engine, and that constant voice in my head telling me not to look back. Eventually, when the fuel gauge dropped below the last line, I spotted a wooden sign just barely reflecting my high beams. It said campground, the kind you'd pass by without a second glance in the daytime. I pulled in on instinct. The gravel lot was half overgrown, and the little wooden office was locked up tight. Nailed to the door was a wrinkled campground map with faded ink and curled edges. I pulled it off, folded it into my jacket pocket, and drove down a loop road until I found the farthest corner I could tuck into. I parked between 2 trees, leaned the seat back, and tried to convince myself I was just being dramatic. I told myself it was all in my head. Just road fatigue. Too many hours alone. I don't know how long I was out before the tapping started. It was sharp and deliberate. 3 raps right against the driver's side window. Not a tree branch, not rain. My eyes flew open. My heart was doing this frantic, fluttering thing in my chest. I turned my head slowly, almost afraid of what I'd see, but there was nothing. Just black glass. The tapping stopped. I sat there, frozen, then told myself, again, that it had to be something stupid. Acorns, maybe. Or something falling from a branch. Anything but what it felt like. Eventually, I drifted off again, barely. When I woke up with the morning light filtering through the trees, the first thing I noticed was the missing map. The one I'd stuffed into my jacket the night before. I dug through my pockets. Empty. But on the passenger seat was a different sheet of paper, crisp, clean, folded perfectly, like someone had placed it there carefully. 3 words written in thick black marker, "Keep driving." My throat went dry. I didn't even bother grabbing my things. I just started the car with shaking hands, and pulled out of that campground as fast as the gravel would let me. That's when I saw the tire tracks. They veered off the road, cutting into the woods at an angle. They weren't there the night before. I would have noticed. They were too clear, too fresh. I followed them. I don't know why. Some stupid part of me wanted to believe they led back to a highway or another person or anything familiar. They didn't. The tracks twisted deeper into the trees, the path narrowing until the gravel gave way to soft dirt. And then, in a clearing surrounded by trees, the tracks just ended, and there it was again. That same green pickup, engine idling, smoke puffing from the exhaust like slow, steady breaths. The driver's side door hung open, waiting. I didn't stop. I didn't even think. I slammed the car into reverse so hard the tires spun out on the dirt. Branches scraped the sides of the Civic as I backed out onto the main road. I didn't stop driving until the sky started turning light, and even then, I kept checking the mirror like I expected to see it appear again. But it didn't. When I saw a highway sign for Knoxville, I almost cried. Pulled into the first gas station I found and stumbled inside like I'd been sleepwalking. The clerk didn't say much, just handed me a cup of coffee and asked if I was all right. I said I was fine. I wasn't. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I sat in that car for 10 minutes before I could start it again, watching the rearview mirror the whole time, but nothing came. I drove straight south from there. Didn't even care where I was going. Just wanted to get away from those hills, those roads, that green truck. Haven't set foot in Appalachia since.